Hi there, my name is Glenn Barfield, Accessibility PM here at HCL Accessibility as a Service. Like many others, we were going to attend the 35th annual CSUN Assistive Technology Conference, but because of the coronavirus, we were not able to. So what we have done, we've put together this PowerPoint presentation, this podcast of our PowerPoint presentation. We were going to give it a CSUN, the Accessibility plus Universal Design equals Value presentation. So we hope that you're able to enjoy this from the safety and comfort of your own home or your office, and that you're doing all the things that everyone has told you to do, washing your hands, social distancing, and things like that. And so with that, let's get into the presentation. So this is Accessibility plus Universal Design equals Value. First, I want to give you some context so that you can understand where we're coming from with this. Those of us that are people with disabilities, myself, for instance, I'm an amputee. My leg ends about 7 inches below my knee. We represent part of the diversity that is human beings. We are on that bell curve, and we're at one end of the bell curve or the other, and we are part of what it is to be a human being. And we're not actually disabled so much as we're living with a disability. We still want to do all those things that everyone else wants to do. We still need to do our shopping online, banking online. We still want to go play soccer with our kids. We still want to go bicycle riding. We still want to be involved with those things and live independently as much as we can with that disability that we have. The problem that we have is that hardware and software is disabled. Now, it's kind of a mind shift to think this, but if the hardware and software does not do what it's supposed to do, it has the disability that is preventing me from doing the things that I should be able to do, that other people can do without having to rely upon the software or the hardware. So that's something to kind of wrap your head around. What we're looking for is the hardware and software to become enabled to work with this diversity of human beings that we represent. That is the ultimate goal, is that the hardware and software matches up and brings everyone up to the same level. It's that universal design that we're looking for. So let's look at some demographics, and many of you probably already know these, and you've probably seen them in other reports as well. I won't read every single one, but they are some pretty darn impressive demographics. People are getting older. So the thing I want to bring up here is that people who are older don't necessarily think of themselves as disabled. My mother is a classic example. She does not consider herself disabled. But when she is using a website, if it's difficult for her to use for some reason, she goes to a different website. That counts. And that's like I said, people acquire disabilities, and sometimes the disabilities are temporary. You break an arm. You're basically one-handed until that hand is out of a cast. So that means you're probably not using the keyboard or the mouse very much. You're having to rely on the keyboard, things like that. And yeah, we're going to have a lot more people over the age of 65 very, very soon. It's going to be a huge number that's going to have a massive impact upon the disability population. And there's 1 billion people worldwide represent the disability number that we know of. There are many people who are disabled that are not in that number. They're just not counted for one reason or another. So in response to this, many companies have decided, okay, we got to get accessible. And the first reason they do it is because of the stick. You know the whole thing about how to drive a donkey, a stick or a carrot. Well, the stick in this case is lawsuits. And if you have a legal team or you've spoken with anyone from a legal team about this, they can probably tell you some stories. The number of lawsuits that have gone up over year after year after year is pretty dramatic. And you can see the numbers here. There's a lot of big publicity about some of the lawsuits. You've probably all heard about the Domino's fiasco. Domino's basically figured it's cheaper and more cost effective to take this to the Supreme Court than to fix our website. I'm quite sure their lawyers said, hey, this is a great idea. And the lawyers probably made a great deal of money from that decision. Domino's, well, they didn't do so well in that decision. Something to keep in mind. So that's one of the sticks. And there are just straight up costs. Carnival Corporation, $405,000. Target, about $10 million in damages and legal fees. H&R Block, $100,000 in civil penalties. Some states in America have just a minimum. We're going to hit you with a $4,000 plus attorney fees right off the bat just for every ADA violation. Generally, businesses pay anywhere from $10,000 to $90,000 to resolve these claims. So you have to ask yourself, okay, what's more cost effective? Going to court or just fixing the website or fixing my IT product? There's also the public relations part of it. And you probably have seen some of these headlines here. And these are big names. Beyonce, her entertainment company got sued. And one thing I want to make sure you've got in your minds here, and it's highlighted there in that little red box, people with disabilities are 3 times likely to avoid an organization and twice as likely to dissuade others because of the negative diversity reputation. And this is true throughout social media. If a person with disabilities finds a website or a service that works really well for them, you can bet they're on Facebook, they're on Reddit, they're on every social media they can find saying, hey, I found this really great thing, you should use it. And they're recommending it. If they find something negative, they're going to talk about that as well. You don't want to be in that category where they're talking about a negative website and it's your website. So what's the solution? Well, it's universal design. And the concept of universal design is pretty straightforward. Okay? It can be accessed and understood and used to the greatest extent possible by all people, regardless of any of their qualifications regarding age, ability, size, disability, etc. And it's not a special requirement. This isn't something for a particular chunk of people. The benefit actually helps everyone overall. It works for everybody. You make something universal, you encompass more people in the design. And that's kind of like the fundamental of good design. You want people to be able to access your site universally. So these 7 principles, let's look at these. Equitable use. Flexibility in use. Equitable use, I think, is pretty straightforward to everybody, but flexibility in use, what does that mean? That means you've got more ways of using a website than just one. If you have a website where the only reason you know a button is active is because of one indicator, and somebody else is requiring some other kind of indicators, color, outline, mouse reaction, sound, something like that, you expand who can use that particular item on the website. It needs to be simple and intuitive to use. Intuitive is a difficult thing to achieve sometimes. That's one of the reasons we recommend accessibility studies, usability studies, user research. It helps you understand what's intuitive and what is not. Perceptible information. There's lots of different ways of being told something through a visual medium. You can also include everything from color indicators to bolding letters to changing of shading, many different ways of making information perceptible when it needs to be perceptible. Tolerance for error. And this is a big thing. There are a lot of websites that you make a mistake, that's it. You can't do anything else. You've left the user no options. Create tolerance for error in your websites. Low physical effort. You've probably all been to websites where to accomplish something, you've got to go and click 5 or 6 different things, and you're keyboarding and you're mousing around, and it's a lot of work. You need to diminish that as much as possible. Size and space for approach and use. You want to be able to make it so that the size and the way it's positioned on the website is approachable, it's easy to get to, it's easy to use. You don't want things pushed off to the corners or condensed into one area, or you've packed so much information in there it's hard to figure out where you're going and what you're doing. You want to give some size and some space for its use. Usability and design constraints. Now, there are 3 constraints. Completion. The task is achievable with any way the user expects. They've got to be able to go in and complete that task every single time, easily and efficiently, which brings us to the next one, efficiency. You don't want them spending 5 minutes doing what should really only take 5 seconds. If you can get it down to as efficient use as possible, that's what you want to do. Satisfaction. From beginning to end, the use is enjoyable. It's pleasant. It is not time-consuming and irritating. It's pleasant, and they feel satisfied once they've got through the scenario that you've got there on the website that you're trying to get the user through. Now, the Sumerians where this comes into place. Operating systems. Start at the beginning with the operating system. Microsoft, I'm talking to you, and also Linux and Mac, I'm talking to you. Make that the operating system, the base of the whole thing, accessible from the core, from the architecture at the beginning. Authoring tools. Let's help our developers. Let's help them develop tools, develop sites that are accessible because the tools they use are set up to do that. Get into the user agents. Offer the content that is the best way of accessing those APIs. Make it easy for people to be able to build sites that are accessible. And then when you're putting in the content, whether it's text, whether it's audio, whether it's video, whether it's pictures, there are best practices that you can follow. If you know the WCAG, you're probably familiar with these. If you're not, read up on the WCAG. That's the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Look that up and apply those rules to your content and the applications that you put out there. Now in the digital world, there's two things that you want to kind of focus on. Accessibility. You need to integrate with assistive technologies to level the playing field. So what this means is that you can write a very, very good website that, say, is quick and efficient to use, but assistive technology, that is JAWS, NVDA, narrator, voiceover, and other assistive technologies that read the screen, put it into an audio form that someone can then listen to and then utilize the website by the assistive technology, telling them what's on the screen. Usability. Now this is something that is overall for everyone, not just people with disabilities, but everyone. If you've got a website that is usable to everyone, that includes people with disabilities. That includes people using screen readers. That includes people who have set the colors for their color blindness. That includes people who are using Zoom. That includes everyone who's had to alter their interface to be able to compensate for the disability that they're working with at that time. So making sure you get to that good universal design. Accessible and usable design constitutes universal design. Have actual users involved in the development, the testing, the design, the architecture of the website or the IT product. Get real users. Have them go through things as if they were doing their day-to-day activities using your website or your IT product. And again, I want to reiterate that. There's nothing more valuable than actually having actual users involved. You've got to have that. And the other part to doing this is go and look at the other companies that are doing a good job. Learn from them. Ask them, how do you do this? Go through their website, do an analysis, do a comparative analysis. Look at the way they are succeeding and adopt those practices. There's no reason you can't do that. Go and do it. So then after you've been hit with a stick that's made you move along to accessibility, there's a good side to it. There's the carrot. And I just want to put in a quick note for my friend Lauren. I was going to put a cupcake there, but it went with a carrot. That's a side note. You don't have to worry about that. The good public relations. Whoops, went too far. There are some companies who've done an amazingly good job about this. One of the companies not mentioned here is Microsoft. They have made a huge push to becoming accessible. And they recognize that they still have a long way to go. All companies do. But they have made that paradigm shift from we need to be accessible because we're going to get in trouble with lawsuits or regulations to we want to be accessible because it opens up our business, our products, our services to more people. It opens up our products to a greater portion of the world and the still further that we can take this. They've made that paradigm shift where they've realized that Being accessible for everybody is just the right thing to do. And I extol all companies to make that paradigm shift. Go from, I'm worried about being sued, to how do I help get more people working with my website, with my company, with my IT products? That's where you want to be at. You want that paradigm shift to that next level. Brand enhancement is a very, very big deal, really, because there's a lot of people, more and more of them, they're looking for companies that support their values. And those companies that do a good job of it, they're noticed. And yes, those companies that don't also get noticed. Dominoes, again. You want people to have that positive experience with your brand. Accessibility makes that happen. And you also, by having that good brand enhancement due to accessibility, you create more loyal customers. You get that in front of people and they start talking about you in a good way. They start recommending you and your website and your IT product to others. And that's really what you're looking for. And yeah, social responsibility. This is something that many, many companies are considering part of their core values, and that's a good thing, and accessibility is part of that. This is a technical thing that a lot of people don't really think about, but search engine optimization. You go in and make a website accessible because your video, your audio, your text, your images, and all that kind of stuff is been made accessible so that it can be used by screen readers. You increase the search engine optimization level. And again, purely a technical thing, but it's a bonus. It's a good thing to have. And yeah, I recommend this to everybody, especially you developers. Look at your website, look at that search engine optimization, and think about those two things and how they're related, because I'm betting you'll find that there are ways you could help your company achieve that just with the accessibility improvements that you install. All right, so let's look at the bottom line. Let's look at the dollars, okay? You've got about 19.4% of the population of the USA being disabled. You have got a combined spending power of $220 billion. That's a lot of money. You've got about 17.5 have a functional limitation. You've got an extended market of about 2.3 billion people worldwide, with about $6.9 trillion. That's $1 trillion in annual disposable income. That's a huge number. It's ridiculous. And there are some examples, some concrete examples of companies making that shift to accessibility and seeing a huge bonus because of it. Tesco, back in England, they enjoyed the 13 million pound annual increase in sales after going onto accessibility. Mitsukoshi Limited, 45% increase in online sales. Okay, those are again big numbers. They realize that accessibility is the right thing to do for many, many reasons, and yes, the bottom line is one of them. So, the value for business and customers. Maximize your reach, your revenues, and ultimately your profits. Increase your productivity for all and promote innovation. You'll probably notice those names there for when we were going to be doing this at CSUN. My co-workers AJ and Lauren and I were going to read each of these off one at a time, and I just didn't get around to removing the names there. I apologize for that. You get that positive media response. This is a competitive differentiator. You can actually go and tell people, tell companies, tell customers, we are different from our competitor because we are more accessible. That is a huge thing to be able to put on all your branding, all your advertising, all your PR, all your media releases, everything. Get that customer loyalty. Build it. Accessibility will do that. Support your corporate social responsibility. Show the world that you are a socially responsible company. There's the benefits that come with that flow across all avenues of business. And this is also the thing I gotta help you remember. The families, the friends, the coworkers, healthcare professionals, people involved with those that have disabilities, they pay attention to this stuff as well. They look at this, they learn from this, they take into consideration companies that help or hinder their friends and relatives that have disabilities. All right, thank you very much for spending this short amount of time with me on this presentation. I hope you've learned something from it. I hope it's given you something to think about. We do have our email address here, accessibility@hcl.com. You can send an email to us. We'll get a hold of you, answer your questions, give you some information that you might need. And if you have any just general questions about accessibility, send them our way. We're more than happy to answer them. We're more than happy to work with you to help you and your company on your journey to accessibility. Thank you.